All right, hello.
Hi, everybody. We have a different background today.
We are traveling.
Yeah, we're on a Northern Ontario road trip right now. So we were in Sudbury on the weekend with Mandy and Mary Brenham doing a Wealth Genius boot camp in Sudbury.
That was a
It
really good
was
event.
it was
Really good.
incredible. We met some really cool people.
First boot camp in Northern Ontario.
Yeah, and if you know me, I'm a Northern Ontario girl. I'm not from Sudbury. I'm from Thunder Bay, which is where we are right now. We're actually at my mom's place, so that's why our
Yeah.
background looks a little different than normal. But we're doing this, and then we are off to Winnipeg for another Wealth Genius boot camp with Alfonso and Helene, and then we'll spend some time in Kenora, and then head back to Ottawa.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got a lot going on for the next couple of weeks, but it's all good stuff.
Yeah. So welcome to our power lunch. Today we're talking about tenant relations. So building good relationships with your tenants, selecting the right tenants for your properties,
Right tenants for the right properties.
and then just protecting your interests as a landlord as well. And a lot of that really comes down to selecting the right tenants.
It's extra important in Ontario to get the right fit for the tenant and the property, and also to maintain good relationships with them. A lot of people are scared to invest in Ontario because of the LTB, the laws, and for us, I mean, we invest in Ontario. We always have. So I think it just comes down to how you go about it and how you view like your tenants and your buildings and that kind of stuff. And it can be a really like Ontario can be a great place to invest. And if you are able to create good relationships with your tenants, you can mitigate a lot of risk and avoid a lot of issues. So we wanted to chat about that today because we are actually doing some tenant onboarding right now for some of our properties. So we figured, hey, we're doing that right now. Why don't we hop on here and chat about it?
Yeah, it
Right?
might be a little harder for us to see the comments this time because we don't have the right setup, but I'm trying to figure this out
How to
here.
best do it.
Yeah, how to best do it. So,
Oh, Lisa, we'll see you in Winnipeg soon. We're heading there on Friday, so we're going to be spending some time in Thunder Bay, but
mhm.
we'll be heading to Winnipeg on Friday. So we'll see
Yes,
you
yes,
then.
yes.
Okay,
There we go, there we go.
are we doing better?
I think so. We should be able to see the comments
Thank
now.
goodness we have Jeff as IT. It always makes it a little bit tougher when you don't quite have your setup down, but
hmm
that's okay. So why don't we start with our process on sort of
Okay.
selecting tenants and placing them in the right place. Of course, as always, if you have something you want to share, if you have an experience you want to share, if you have a question, make sure you comment in the chat. Like I said, it's a little bit tougher for us right now to see the chat. We don't have a regular setup, but we're going to do our best.
I think I've got it. I think.
So we still want this to be super interactive. If you've never been to one before, like we like it to be interactive. So make sure you say hi, leave a comment, and be a part of the discussion.
hmm
Yeah. So our process for finding the right tenant for the right property.
I think one question that people have a lot is where do I post my units available?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of places that you can post. I think majority of where we find our tenants is actually Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. I've tried a couple of different places to post the ad for the tenants we're onboarding right now, and it still comes back to Facebook. I think Facebook has been our most successful place. It's been the most interactive as far as finding tenants.
Yeah.
I use rentals.ca. I've used Kijiji, but it still always comes back to Facebook Marketplace.
We've never used a realtor.
No, we've
So we've
never used a
never
realtor.
posted on like MLS or anything like that, unless rentals posts on MLS, rentals.ca. I'm not sure, but everything like even our very first rental, the best candidates we received were coming from Facebook.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot less anonymous people, anonymity coming from
I don't
Facebook?
know.
Because you are, that's your profile. It is who you are,
Sounds like
right?
something you'd find at the bottom of the ocean, but that's fine.
Anonymity? I don't know. I
And
think that's
anonymity.
a
But yeah, I also think it depends on your location because I've heard some places, maybe I don't know if it's like smaller towns or what the correlation is, but I've heard that some places are different. Like some places Kijiji is better, some places Facebook Marketplace is better.
Yeah.
So I think you have to know your market and what works best for your area because I do think it's different.
I think so. We should be able to see the comment.
Sorry.
I do think it's different depending on what area you're in. So get to know your area. Maybe ask people that have posted rentals in your area what works best. But I know for us, for the Ottawa area, Facebook Marketplace has been probably hands down the best spot since we started posting rentals. And I think we have a pretty, I don't say intense, but it's almost like a job interview when we're looking for tenants.
Thorough, yeah. We're definitely thorough. We want to, especially we're in Ontario, right? We want to ensure that we place the right tenant in that property. It's not easy to evict a bad tenant.
Or a tenant that was placed in maybe the wrong unit.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's maybe I don't know. Bad tenants, I don't know, but placed in the incorrect unit, we'll say. But yeah, it's a difficult process if it's not a good fit. So we have a pretty, I'll say, strict process on how we select our tenants. And one of the products that we actually use that we've always used for the final tenant application, but that I've recently started using for tenant screening is Single Key.
This is not an ad.
No,
or promotion for
I'm
Single
not
Key.
paid by Single Key to say this.
It's just a good tool that we've used.
Yeah, it used to have a different name, right?
Neighborly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bought by Single Key.
Yeah, so we've always used what was Neighborly and is now Single Key for our final application. That is something that you pay for, so you want to make sure that if you're sending out those applications, that you're pretty sure that's the tenant that you are going to be placing in your unit. It's kind of, we use it as a final check, I guess.
You can charge the tenant for that, but I've never really been able to figure out a good justification, or like I can't wrap my head around actually doing that. So if you've done that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on charging the tenant for that application process and for the credit check.
Yeah, I know some people say like it'll show how serious your tenant is, and make sure that if they're going to be paying for the application, they're likely going to be wanting to move into your unit. We've never done that before, so like you said, I don't know if that's something that will change. But yeah, if that's something that you've done before, I'd love to hear how you present that to the tenant.
Yeah, because it's an option, so I'm guessing that people do it, right?
Yeah.
You can just pass that charge onto the tenant. When they fill out the application, they pay for it. But because it does a background check and a credit check, that's why it costs money. It's only about $25, but still, if you're interviewing 50 tenants for a property, and you end up sending that Single Key application out to a good chunk of those, then that $25 adds up quick.
Yeah, but we don't tend to send it to that many people. I think the way that we use it is, like I said, it's a final. It's like the final check to cross the finish line. So what Single Key also has, and again, like Jeff said, this isn't an ad for Single Key, but you can use Single Key. We've used like Google Forms.
Google Forms.
To create an app, like a screening tool.
Yeah, we do a pre-screen through Google Forms, but I think you were about to get to the fact that Single Key actually has a pre-screen built into it as well, so maybe we don't have to use Google Forms anymore.
Yeah,
so we're just kind of testing that out now.
We've just moved over to, like Jeff said, test that out, so we'll see how that goes. But some sort of pre-screen tool where it's like I'd say that hard kind of yes, no, you're a good fit, you're not a good fit. It's got very basic questions like, do you smoke? Do you have pets? How many people will live in the unit? What's the household income range? It's very like kind of broad questions. Have you given your previous landlord or your current landlord, I guess, notice that you're going to be leaving? What's your move-in date? So it's very broad information that you're getting in that pre-screen. And like I said, that's really to decide, is this someone that you would want to show the unit to? Or is this someone that maybe isn't a good fit? because what I was finding before we were doing the pre-screen was that we had a lot of people signing up to come and see the unit, but some people wouldn't show up, they wouldn't be a good fit, and then you're spending all of this time showing all these people a unit that doesn't make sense for them. So this is a really quick way for us to say, should this person come and see the unit, or is this not a good fit?
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to say jumping through hoops, but it's a process, right? You have to get past the first level to get to the next level. And the first level is not a showing unless you're doing a group showing.
Yeah,
then
an open house or something.
Kind of like an open house where I'm going to be here from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Thursday. So if you're interested in the unit, then you can come during that time. And then I'll already be there. But I don't want to schedule every single person that clicks on the link on Facebook that says, is this still available? I don't want to schedule a showing with every single one of them because 9 out of 10 of them aren't serious and aren't necessarily qualified or good candidates for that property or that unit.
I'm laughing because I wish they would take out the automatic "is this still available" button. It drives me crazy.
on anything Facebook Marketplace.
It drives me crazy. You get so many people that will do the "is this still available?" It's that what is it, a TikTok or something?
Yeah.
Or it's like, "is this available?" and they just keep walking. You're like
the drive-by.
Yeah. You're like, why did you even ask? But anyways, that's a tangent.
Yes, Sam. So frustrating when they don't show.
Yeah, it's the no show, it's the "is this still available?" and then they just don't answer you ever again.
But the pre-screen isn't a guarantee either, right? So we had we drove out to one of the properties. Well, I drove out to one of the properties to meet 3 different candidates. They were all scheduled back to back. They had all gone through the pre-screen process, and only one of them showed up.
Yeah.
So I was there for 2, I think they were half-hour showings or something like that. I was probably there for an hour and a half, and it was the third person that showed up. The first 2 didn't, so I was like just walking around the property, doing kind of an inspection, just trying to be useful while I was there, but it was not as productive as it could have been.
Yeah. So it's not a perfect process, but at least it helps do that kind of
Patrice,
best dressed man in the room.
I don't know.
Whoa, okay. Jean Riddell. Enjoy these sessions on the break. At what rate can you determine in the first phase of screening that a candidate won't be a good fit? I think it of course it comes down to what type of unit you're renting as well. So the biggest thing that I look at, and I think it's really important, is the income range. So that's one of the questions that we do have on the tenant screen is, what is your income range? And to me, like, almost like ethically, if someone has an income range that their rent is like half or more of their household income, to me, like, I ethically can't even rent them that property.
Yeah, I think it should be a third. The rent should be a third of their income or something, third or less.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the range that we look for.
And a lot of our rental units are they are well renovated. They have not higher end finishes, but they're nice finishes. They tend to attract a higher income earner tenant.
They're not rundown properties.
Yeah, so
that's the key.
So I think we're looking for the tenant that's okay to pay a little bit more for their rental. And to me, if this person's coming in and they're gonna they're gonna be putting every penny into paying us rent, that to me isn't right, because how are they gonna be able to afford the rest of their life? How are they going to be able to afford their groceries? How are they going to be able to, if they have to pay for gas, get to work, have car payments? So I look at that and I'm like, this isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to live if you pay this rent. So that's one of the biggest things that I look at right away. Is this person a fit? Is this person not a fit?
Yeah, we don't want them to come to the beginning of the month and then have to decide whether they're buying groceries or paying their rent.
Yeah, that would like gut me if that was the situation that a tenant was in. And then things like smoking is a big one. All of our units are non-smoking, so if someone is smoking, then you want to take another look at that. And then where they work too. If they're working
Proximity to their work.
Yeah. So it's just things like, does this unit fit the lifestyle that they already have? But of course, you're going to have a conversation with them afterwards. Like maybe they're moving jobs and that's why they need a new place. So
or they work from home and their office is on the other side of town.
So remember, this is a pre-screen. So sometimes you're going to have to ask the questions like, hey, you'd be a really good fit, but I see my unit, if you're, my unit is one side of the city and you work a half an hour on the other side of the city. Are you okay with that? What's your plan? So things like that. I just want to see, like, does this unit fit the tenant's current lifestyle and does it make sense for them?
Yeah. Another thing that we look for is the amount of people that are going to be staying in the unit versus the size of the unit.
Yep.
So if you're going to have a family of 5 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, doesn't really work all that well, and they're going to be really hard on the utilities and really hard on just the space in general.
Well, it's not going to be comfortable for them.
They won't be comfortable.
Right? Again, it's like, comes back to the ethics of, is this a good living situation for this person? So some things that we look at just to make sure that person is a good fit. And then if they are a good fit, then we have that conversation with them. Now it's time to, hey, let's go and see the unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important part of the process, is being there to actually walk through with the tenant. We don't do group showings. I'm not saying we never will, but we don't typically do them. And it's so that we can get some time one-on-one with the tenant. And we encourage them to bring everybody that's going to be living in the unit so we can get to know, especially anyone that's going to be on the lease, so any adults. Anybody that's 18 or over, we say has to be on the lease. So anybody that's going to be on the lease has to come and see it. And that way we can ask the questions that we need to ask, get to know the tenants a little bit better, do a vibe check and make sure that they are the good fit that we thought that they were going to be based on their pre-screen.
Yeah, gut check is a huge part of the screening process, and it's not something that can really be taught or explained. It's just what is your gut feeling about them, and this goes the same with like hiring contractors or hiring anybody for a job. Gut check goes a long way.
Yeah.
Don't go against your gut.
That's very true. We've done that a couple of times. Not with tenants specifically, but with some of our team members, and we've gone against our gut, and it.
Yeah, because you look at the paper and so you justify it, but then there's just something doesn't sit right, and so you end up justifying beyond your gut, and then I don't know. For us, our gut's always been right. So.
Yeah, right, and we often know it's right because sometimes we haven't listened to it. We should have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Sam says, what's your favorite type of tenant? Families, young couples, etc. It's a very good question.
We typically will go for young couples. I'll just dive right in
Yep.
and answer that. But it depends on the unit.
Yeah.
Young couples are good. They don't stay forever. They're generally respectful. My fear when it's a young couple is them breaking up, and then now you have an issue with one of them wants to stay and get a roommate, and the other one's leaving, or they both, whatever. There's complications, but that tends to be our typical tenant profile.
Yeah.
But
that being
mostly
said,
2 bedrooms, I think, is
a
lot of our units. So.
Like young professional couple, they're going to have need an office in their unit. But that being said, the building that we're working on right now is like, it's not officially a retirement community, but the way that it's
marketed as one.
Yeah, the tenant selection has been focused on retired people. So, I think it really depends on what the environment of the property is. Like for that one, if we were to stick a young couple into these buildings that are, everyone living there is retired, that
won't fit the community.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a good fit. So I think it also depends on what the property is, where it is, and what the vibe of the community in that property is already. And I think it's important to follow that because it's not good for anybody if you try to mix it up and throw a wrench in their plans. But and the other thing is, so this is it's something interesting for you to think about if you're renting in Ontario, is making your units pet friendly. There's a lot of people that are, back and forth about pets. Do we want them? Do we not want them? We, for the most part, have chosen to make our units pet friendly, and we do that through our renovations to make sure things like the flooring are appropriate for pets. Especially with a lot of our duplex conversions, they have a backyard. And the reason that we do that very intentionally is because you technically can't say no to somebody bringing a pet in the unit.
Yeah. Again, this is coming into Ontario landlord laws.
Yes. This is specifically Ontario that's what we know, so that's what we're speaking to. But for us, we actually will ask them for their the pet information on their application. And I think Single Key still does this, but they ask for a picture of the pet. So the pet is
Neighborly
basically
had that. I think Single Key does as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like the pet is a part of the application. And to me, I would rather know that the pet is coming in and not have it try to be a secret, that the tenant's trying to sneak a pet into the unit without me knowing.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's going to create more issues than if we're just upfront, we're pet friendly, we're prepared for that, and then they bring the pet in. So something to think about. And the other thing is people with pets will pay a little bit more to rent the unit.
Yeah, because there are a lot of places that advertise that they do not allow pets.
Which technically isn't allowed anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
But
but the tenants, if they're not aware of all of the Ontario rules, then they'll just listen to what the ad says. And obviously, you don't want to go into a unit saying just having that immediate battle with your landlord. So if it says it's not pet friendly, then they're probably going to avoid that one if they have a pet. Mm-hmm. But they will pay a premium to stay in a unit where their pet is allowed, because that's a family member to them, and they're not going to part ways with that just because the unit isn't pet friendly.
Yeah. So this is a decision that we've made. It's not necessarily a decision that you have to or don't have to make, but it's just something to think about, especially if you're in Ontario.
Sam has a good question. Do you guys have a screening questions for pets? I've tried that, and they don't usually answer my questions very well. Just joking. Did they make a lot of noise, bathroom trained, that kind of thing? The tenants will typically tell you that, my pet is well trained, yada yada yada, but there's not really much you can do anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't go out of my way to really check or ask questions. They'll always come forth and say I have this dog, but they're really well trained and whatever. They're always going to say that.
They're already potty trained.
Everybody's dog is perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you can ask the questions.
Somehow they're always angels. You're right.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
Yeah, exactly. So you can ask the questions. Like Jeff said, they're might not tell you exactly how their dog behaves, but it is what it is. You can do your best, do as much due diligence as you can, but there's only so much you can do. And obviously, if it's like a brand new puppy, that kind of brings up some alarm bells. But you can say no, you can't bring your puppy in here. But then if they get a puppy anyways, when they start living in the unit,
there's nothing you can do.
It is what it is. So.
And if there's noise complaints and stuff like that, that's bylaw, right? So at that point, you're calling bylaw.
Yeah. Favorite resources that you use for running background checks. So that was Single Key is what we were talking about. So they do a pre-screen. They have a pre-screen section, which is, as far as I've seen so far, I haven't had to pay for anything, and I've sent a bunch of pre-screens already. So
pre-screen, yeah, should be free.
And then the actual screening tool, there's a full screening tool that does a credit check. And a background check and everything.
Criminal history and all that.
Yeah. So that's a paid resource that's kind of our final step, which is actually right after we do the walkthroughs with tenants.
Yeah, exactly. So once we've we figured out, okay, we've met them on site, they like the unit, they're serious, they're a good fit in our eyes, they passed the gut check, then the next step is the official application, which is done through single key. So yeah, if you go back to the beginning of this video, we were talking about single key as well.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you just kind of came in a little bit late. So
yeah. So that's the tool that we've always used is single key. Though this weekend, so because single key comes with a credit check, and this weekend Mandy brought up a really interesting point. So we were, like we had mentioned earlier, we were at the multifamily boot camp with Mandy in Sudbury. And she brought up a really good point that she doesn't always necessarily do a credit check because some of her tenants, depending on the demographic of the building that she has, sometimes doing a credit check doesn't make a lot of sense because sometimes they're renting in that area because they don't have great credit. It's a part of kind of their history and why they aren't buying a property themselves.
Yeah, it really depends on the unit, it depends on the location, it depends on the building itself and what type of tenants are going to be living in that building.
Yes.
If your tenant profile for that building doesn't have good credit, then doing a credit check isn't really going to tell you much.
Yeah, like
it's not going to give you good information to go off of.
Yeah, you're expecting the credit score not to be very high, so you do the credit score and you're like, oh, well,
shocker.
There it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so. But I think it also, if you're thinking about it, or if you're maybe in your demographic that you know the credit score isn't going to be very high, you can talk to them about the credit check and then see what comes out of that. So say like if I do a credit check, is there anything that I should be aware of that's going to come out of it? And then maybe it's that you don't end up doing it, but it comes from having that conversation with them that like, I had this difficulty on my credit history. I had this difficulty, but this is how we're working through this right now and how we're building the credit.
Yeah, I mean, and most people don't know what's even on a credit report. If they've never looked at their own credit report or looked at any, then they don't even know what's on there. They might tell you about the fact that they owe Blockbuster Video $12 for an overdue movie or something, right?
I have a library book still that you didn't bring back, and now the library wants to charge me. It's not going to show up on your credit report. It's just different ways to screen your tenants. And I think it comes down to the demographic, what you're comfortable with, and what your process is. But that's basically our process: is the pre-screen, the property viewing, and then that final full. We personally do the credit check, so the full credit check, and full background. So
we're at the 30-minute mark, and we've only brushed on the topic that we had as a whole.
That's true.
I don't know if we break this up into...
Yeah, why don't we do part 2? We'll do part 2 next week.
Yeah, so I think we'll do that because we had some stuff about actually keeping a good relationship with your tenants, and not just talking about finding a good tenant. I didn't realize that there was so much to say about the actual tenant selection process. So we might break this up into either 2 or 3 videos. So tune in next week, I guess, to learn more about the actual building relationships with your tenants and keeping good tenants in your units.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any more comments before we.
There's sort of green and red.
Ooh, what are some green flags that you look for? I like that. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I really like when I'm talking to a tenant is how enthusiastic they are about the unit. Some people will they will message you. They'll be like, where's the application? Send me the application. I send them the application. They do it right away. And then they're like, let's go.
They're
let's
eager,
see the
right?
unit. Yeah, they respond to me. They show up to their screening, and surprisingly, that is
hallelujah. They showed up.
Surprisingly, that doesn't happen very often. Depending on the market and where units are at, but I like it when a tenant is very proactive. They'll get the stuff filled out right away. They will ask, good questions going into the unit. They won't just be like, yep, I want it. They'll ask really good questions. They'll have, good conversation with you. So that right off the bat is a green flag for me if they are asking good questions and are, willing to do the application, because some people aren't willing to do it, and then that acts as that right away.
Judging a book by its cover, just when they show up for the showing, how are they dressed? What are they doing? If they're a contractor, then if they show up with paint on their clothes, then whatever, that's okay. But if they're well put together, I think is a big thing. And then if you can sneak a look in their car, that will give you a really good indication on how they're going to keep their unit.
Yeah.
If their car's a mess, they're probably going to have a messy unit.
Which always makes me laugh because I'm pretty sure if someone did that to me, they wouldn't rent me their unit.
Your car's a disaster.
Yeah. But the other thing that we heard recently and we've started looking at is if they walk into your unit. For us, ours were under construction for a little while, so it was like, please keep your shoes on. But if they're not, if it's, if you've just had the unit cleaned, do they take their shoes off without prompting?
Mm-hmm.
And if you either have to prompt them to remove their shoes or they don't, and it's a new unit, again, that could be a testament to how
well they're going to respect the unit and the house itself.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. So my dad says I've seen Dakota's car. I would be a really good tenant, but I live in my car a lot. So not literally live in my car, but there's stuff from all the activities around my car. So yeah. But yeah, I think it's just little things that, like, especially when you're doing the walkthrough, how do they respect the unit when they're walking through it?
Yeah. And Alfonso has always had three really good questions to ask while you're on site. Mm-hmm. And then he tells you to do it in a way that, I don't know if you've ever gone across the border and spoken to border control. They're always dead face, right? They never, if you crack a joke in front of them, they will not laugh. Everything that they say, and they ask you questions, they're very open-ended questions. They're not very specific to yes or no. So one of them, do you smoke?
Mm-hmm. It's a big one.
Will it just be you in the unit? And then, what was the third one? I'm blanking on it right now.
Isn't it just like,
tell me about yourself. They're all very open questions, and so, for example, do you smoke? Well, what kind? Right? Oh, okay.
And that's becoming more and more common because of it being legal.
No, I don't smoke, but I vape. Oh, okay. Still no vaping in the unit, right? And it can give you an idea of who they are. Tell me about yourself is very open-ended.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point just in general beyond the 3 questions is asking open-ended questions, not just asking yes or no, because once someone gets talking, listen to them and listen to what they have to say and prompt them to, expand on some things, and you'll get a lot of information that way, whether good or bad information, depending on what the conversation's like. But open-ended questions, and this, I use this a lot even in my medical world, you'll get a lot more information than you'll just get from a yes or no question. So, yeah. Do you want to read Paula's?
Paula says, green flag I had was upon doing a reference check, I learned the tenant first owned a cleaning company and worked with real estate sale business when they first immigrated to Canada, and they made comments on how clean the unit came as they saw it from previous tenant to pre-move-in inspection. They've kept the place in great shape. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously somebody coming from that type of an industry is going to be able to.
As long as they still want to clean when they come home.
True. Very good point. Ask me if they drink is a fun one too. Yeah, actually, we got some really good insight on one fairly recently about that on that topic. So
yeah,
I won't go into too much detail, but
yeah. Well, the unit was also across from the LCBO, so that always brought up some interesting conversations. Oh, the social media check, 100%.
Yes, we do. We go into serious investigator mode on social media. Yeah, Googling them, looking for them on Facebook, on Instagram.
Making sure they're not showing up in some crazy news article that you're like, Oh, and like different variations of like their name.
Yeah.
Have they, are they saving the world, or are they doing some stuff that maybe you don't want happening in your unit? So,
Yeah. And that's where gut check comes in, and just being judgmental, I think, goes a long way when looking at what types of things are they posting if you were able to find them on social media.
mhm.
What groups are they a part of?
Yep. Yeah. So
What do their profile pictures look like? Is it them partying all the time? Then they're probably going to continue doing that in your unit.
yeah, if they have someone like holding up their hair, or if they're like, you might want to double think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we'll have to split this up. So I also wanted to talk about how to maintain good relationships with your tenants, but I think that's a whole other topic.
You have to tune in next week for that one.
So
Part
next
2.
week, this time, same place, same time, we'll do part 2. So we'll talk about how we maintain good relationships with our tenants, some things we do right away, some things we do ongoing, and how that's kind of become that culture piece has become a big part of our business, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about that next time. If you know anybody that you think this would be really useful for, this will be also on YouTube. So it will obviously still be on our profile, but we're also posting all these to YouTube. So feel free to share these with anybody that you think would find them useful. As always, if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, not next week because we already have an idea for next week, but any time in the future, reach out to us. We can chat about it, or we can always bring on a guest to maybe chat about some topics. So just message us.
Yep. And if you're not tuning in live, if you are on YouTube or just coming into Facebook on the recording, drop your comments below. We're still watching the videos, obviously. So just leave us your comments on any tips that you may have or any feedback as well.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. We'll see everybody next week.
Next week.
As long as we're not on the road, we should be okay.
No,
But yeah.
we should be okay. Yeah.
All right. We'll see everyone next week. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time.
Bye, guys.